Yeah, it's being recorded. Okay.
All right.
No, I was down at the downtown at the demonstration last night until about 12:15, 12:30, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, that is a late night.
Well, things got hairier after I left, which is sort of what I unfortunately expected would happen. But and after I left, and most of the moms and the dads had all left as well. So, but I I had a couple of pepper balls shot in my direction, and
wow.
and saw the gas, and actually saw a laser. I have actually a video of a laser being pointed at me. So it was and I was nowhere. I was not. I was on the street across this. I was a block, almost a block away from where everything else was taking place. So they were just pointing and shooting pretty much against folks who were not at all involved. So.
Wow. Well, I mean, if you want to mention a little bit of that in the intro, I think folks would definitely, want to hear your perspective on what's been happening downtown.
Yeah.
Justin's giving me the sign here, so I'll kick it off. All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is TAO's next session of our Member Resiliency series with Senator Lou Frederick. And I'm Skip Newberry, President and CEO of TAO. A couple of rules of engagement before we start. All participants have been muted, so please remain on mute unless a member of the TAO staff calls on you to talk. You may ask or respond to questions in the chat box, privately or publicly, by directing your message to Justin Martinez. We'll monitor the chat box and respond throughout the discussion. We'll ask you all to engage via the participant icon as well on your screen. And we also encourage you to engage with us on social media during the call and throughout the day. We appreciate all the support, and you can see where to find us on the slide. Due to limited time, we'll capture any remaining questions we don't get to and shift them to our online member engagement platform, which is Mobilize. And it's TAO's virtual member community where we'll post answers and keep the conversation going afterwards. If you have any questions about Mobilize, please reach out to Justin, whose email is on the screen. And if you have any questions about TAO, feel free to contact us at membership@techoregon.org. TAO staff support is provided by Justin, and we're happy to take feedback, questions, comments, or discuss sponsorship opportunities. And on Friday, we'll be speaking with Representative Julie Fahey on the goals, direction, and collaborative approach of the legislators of Oregon's Future Caucus. And finally, a huge thank you to Portland State University for underwriting this segment of the series. We appreciate their sponsorship and support. It's now my pleasure to introduce Senator Frederick, and he represents Senate District 22 that covers North and Northeast Portland. He serves on the People of Color Caucus and co-chairs the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, the Subcommittee on Education. Senator Frederick's professional life includes 17 years as a television reporter, as Director of Public Information for Portland Public Schools, teacher, actor, and ranch hand. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much, Skip. Appreciate that. And that picture is really very, looking at that picture, I realize how much hair I've managed to grow during this COVID crisis. So I'm getting back to my old fro of a while ago. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I have somebody asked me whether I've been busy this last few weeks. Yes, I've been extremely busy. It is a matter of actually sort of catching up on the things that I've been working on for quite some time. You didn't mention that part of what I did as a television reporter was that I was the science reporter for Channel 8. And that meant that I was actually involved in doing a lot of stories on technology. My background happens to be molecular biology, so I enjoyed going into the lab to deal with that. But my background also happens to deal with the fact that at age 8, that was when I was first tear gassed in a civil rights I wasn't in the civil rights demonstration. I was actually waiting in the car with my dad as a group of students were in the civil rights demonstration down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I was about 9 years old, and the students piled into the car covered with tear gas at that particular point. Last night I had another smell of tear gas. I was downtown at the demonstrations that are going on down there, which, by the way, have now expanded, become much larger and more active than they had been about 2 weeks ago. The federal guys who came in have basically thrown gasoline on the fire. I was describing it last night to a friend of mine and pointed out that it reminds me of knocking down a hornet's nest. If you when you're standing there, you realize that the folks are really wired up at a particular point. They're pretty angry and upset as a result of the response that they're getting from different groups. Last night it was primarily the federal folks who were firing pepper balls past me, and I was a distance away from the facility. There was no one doing anything that was charging them or anything like that, but they were firing pepper balls there. So I've been at the demonstrations now downtown four of the last 5 nights, and just to see what's going on. I have not stayed until 3 in the morning, which is things clearly change after midnight, and so but I haven't been there till 3 in the morning. I was there last night until about 12:15, 12:30. Why? Well, the reason is I've been dealing with the issue of police accountability for quite some time. I wrote my first political science paper in college was on the racism involved in the Atlanta Police Department, and who was being recruited and why, and what their psychology seemed to be about why they were there. That concern has continued, and the death of George Floyd, I think, made that as clear as possible to the world that we had a major problem. I had been working on bills like that, dealing with those issues since I started in the legislature. My first short session was 2010. I didn't have a bill then, but that was the death of Aaron Campbell in the community here, that people were concerned about that. I began working on some of these issues. We passed 6 bills about 3 weeks ago that dealt with these issues. They were the beginning. They were the start of some of the changes I think we need to have. And that's what I see happening right now, people trying to figure out how to have those changes in the midst of a political situation where it's clear that the White House has decided this is a political issue, and they are using it as much as they possibly can, with help from some folks that I saw last night, trying to rev up the crowd to be more attacking and violent as possible. And so we have a really curious dynamic going on. A group of us, the legislature, looking at police accountability issues, trying to make it clear that we are not going to allow the folks who are supposed to be protecting us to be the ones we have to be protected from. And so that's part of the issue that I struggle with. And at the same time, we have a national focus, not only political focus, but a national focus on all of these issues. So I'm going to stop there because I know you have some questions that folks have had, and I'd love to answer them. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have to leave. I have another committee meeting that I have to be there for, the quorum that starts at 9 o'clock.
Well, thank you. And we'll be sure to make sure we wrap up a little early to afford you some more time to get on with the day. And yeah, I think that was really, really great context in the sense that folks, I think, have a variety of different perspectives. Some have been at the protests themselves. Others have been kind of watching from news and media accounts, but haven't necessarily been down there. And I think people are wondering, how is it different this time based on, your experience in the past with whether it's legislative efforts in Oregon or whether it's with civil rights reform in general. I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about kind of where we go next, both in the legislative session, the next special session, and just personally, like, how are you perceiving this as being different from times in the past?
Well, I'll start with the last one. I think there's the big difference right there is that we had the George Floyd situation was so blatant was so obvious, and you had an image, a visual image that people could relate to and not dismiss. You can't. And his death was on camera. His death was audio. You could hear things going on, and you had a police officer on his neck smiling, as well as 3 police officers next to him doing nothing except helping him hold him down. That image really created a different concept of what we would have seen in the past. We had the death of a number of other folks in the past that were on camera as well, but this was something that was there was no excuse for it. It was very obvious that this was a problem. So people have responded in that way. We have a window of opportunity to actually begin to look at how we deal with police accountability. And we are doing that. We had 6 bills. One dealt with arbitration. Another dealt with the discipline database for police. The expectation of interfering if you see something. We had one bill that dealt with chokeholds and another one with tear gas. And then we had a bill that created a committee that was going to look at use of force issues and how we handle that. Well, that committee is underway right now, and I encourage the folks in your group to look on OLIS, OLIS, Oregon Legislature Information System, and you will find that committee meeting 6 times in the last 2 weeks. We will probably not meet this week because we have other meetings going on, but we'll start again next week. And those committee meetings are really incredible. They are the kinds of things that I would hope that people would look at. If they can't watch the whole committee meetings, look at the testimony, the written testimony that's there. And it talks about things like qualified immunity, what happens in a crowd, the psychology of what's going on, the tactics and the expectations of what takes place in terms of police accountability. But I hope that it speaks to another issue, another approach, which is a reevaluation of what we want to see in public safety. We have spent a great deal of time, and the police agencies spent a great deal of time in a militaristic mode, a fashion that says this is our idea is we're supposed to be somehow guardians, not guardians, where we're supposed to be warriors rather than guardians. And that's a different mindset. I tell the story of the fact that one of my friends, who's a former police chief and mayor of Portland, said that he wanted to see us stop looking at things in terms of law enforcement and look at it in terms of being peace officers. That apparently was something that Ashland decided to do. They put some kind of a bumper sticker on all of their police cars that talk about them being peace officers. And another friend of mine was in Ashland and went up to one of the officers and said, "So has this changed the way people look at you and respond to you?" And the officer said, "No, it's changed the way I look at them, the way I respond to them." That's a mindset. That's a kind of thing we're going to see. That's going to take a long time to go through, but I think that's the direction we want to see. We need to reevaluate whether we need to have the concentration primarily on whether somebody can fire a weapon versus whether somebody can what kind of issues they actually are dealing with. And Eugene and Portland both have plans to put together a core of folks who are going in to look at mental health issues and to look at domestic violence issues and to look at most of the other issues that the police actually deal with every day, rather than try to deal with act as though they're there in a war zone. So that's part of the issue that we're working on.
That's great to hear. I know that was a common question among many of our members, is the shift to more of a community policing type of focus, a peace officer, and also, are there other departments of government that might be better suited to deal with mental health and other related issues than police? And one thing that came up from some of our members was, with all of the different overlapping jurisdictions in terms of local governments in the Portland area, the question was, in terms of federal officers getting into the mix now too, have you seen that there's a bit more of sort of a coalescing of and collaboration among the local government jurisdictions in response to the federal presence? And does that maybe hopefully, present a little bit of an opportunity for greater collaboration beyond the federal presence, where we're trying to deal with some of these complex issues of mental health, police reform? What are your thoughts there in terms of the overlapping, say, Multnomah County, City of Portland, mental health, homelessness, police, sheriff? People are trying to figure out kind of, what's the best approach going forward?
I think you're seeing that quite a bit. First of all, let me just say, if there was possible in the cartoon version to have steam coming out of my ears, I'd be doing that. The federal interference is just absolutely outrageous. But what has happened, not just because of the federal thing. In fact, I think the federal thing may, in some ways, have helped make it clear that the concern, the issues are not about not just about the property issues or whatever they are. We are really trying to reestablish what it is we want to see in terms of public safety overall. The counties, all the jurisdictions are starting to work together in one way or another. They have no choice. And at the state level, we're seeing things like a discipline matrix, a discipline guide for the rest of the state is one of the proposals that you'll see. The concern about what's called qualified immunity, where police officers are not held liable for actions that they take, and in fact, in many cases, nor is the city or the jurisdiction that they represent, because it's based around their particular insurance. So the insurance company ends up paying for things like that, and people know that, and they act accordingly. In other words, without any sense of responsibility, often. So we have. That is being questioned. We'll see some changes related to that. Certainly, I think we'll also see some changes related to how the training is done by the DPSST. That's our police academy down in Salem, and we will see some issues in terms of training. I hope we'll see some issues in terms of recruitment. Who do we want to see as a public safety officer? If you're looking at only at the military, then you have a situation where you've got to change a mindset, because in many cases in the military, they have an enemy. There's a situation where people talk about the rules of engagement. Rules of engagement is a military and war term, and you have a particular enemy that you're dealing with in terms of rules of engagement. But you're talking about a community, you're talking about a neighborhood, it should be talking about your neighbors and the folks that you see every day, or that are not your enemy. So if we're talking about recruitment, if somebody decides that they want to become a police officer and they say their primary role is to catch the bad guys, I really don't want them as police officers, because they're going to start looking for bad guys no matter where they are, rather than being a guardian, rather than being protecting and serving folks. So we're going to see a whole range of things come out of this that relate to every jurisdiction is going to have an impact. This is going to have an impact on every jurisdiction. How much money we spend on particular things, whether they are effective or not, and that's the mental health issues. But one of the things that this virus has brought forward are the discrepancies, the disparities between different communities in terms of the support that they have for housing, for healthcare, for education, for jobs. So all of those things are now we're now able to see those things a little more clearly than we were before. They're not obscured by other issues. And so that's what we're starting to see with the different jurisdictions at this point.
In terms of the way in which some of our member companies have been trying to, think about what role do they play as companies, they've been kind of reimagining things in context of this sort of stakeholder capitalism model, which is a lot of times it used to be you're just holding to your shareholders, right? Or maybe your board of directors, but increasingly, change or calls for change and action are coming from not only that level, but from employees and then from external sources like the community. And companies are increasingly paying more attention. obviously they're making mistakes along the way, but they're trying to figure this out. So in this environment, I'm wondering, do you have any recommendations as companies are starting to figure out how can they do better by their Black employees here in Portland in the tech community? Do you have any recommendations in terms of how they might get more involved in the community or do more on behalf of those professionals?
Well, there are several things. One is this is a blatant promotion. I have no financial involvement in this, but I really think that that the companies need to talk with Stephen Green and a pitch black group that he has put together. They need to be directly involved in that, because his point is in having to create that. He needed to create it because otherwise people were being ignored. And that's something that the companies need to have a direct impact with. I would encourage you, because your companies, because your team, your employees know this system that we're using right now better than most, better than all of us probably. They should. Here's an idea that you can grab. It comes from way back for me, but each one of your teams should adopt a teacher this year who's got to do virtual education, and adopt a particular class, a third grade class, a fourth grade class, a chemistry class, a history class in the high schools or middle schools. If they really want to see something, they should adopt that and say, okay, once a week or once a month, I'm going to be on screen like this, answering questions of the students and the teacher. I mean, that's something that could be done relatively quickly. It can be coordinated by way of a TAO or the companies themselves. But you have an opportunity now, because you can't necessarily, you can't go into the classroom necessarily, but you can now go into the classroom in a way that you couldn't before. I would encourage your folks to think about something like that, a way that they personally can invest their time and their energy and their expertise to give a sense of the possibilities for a lot of kids who really don't see them. I mean, part of the problem we're having, quite frankly, with some of the tech companies and some of the tech folks in the past, the African-American folks, they're often not living in the traditional African-American community, and they don't have the same kind of connection. So they are in fact out in Beaverton, they are in Tigard, they are in Gresham, but they're not in North and Northeast Portland often. And so the kids who need to see that they have some opportunities like that don't get a chance to physically see them. Well, electronically, they may be able to see them if you can find a way to adopt these classes. There are enough classes out there that they could adopt that you won't run out of places to go. And frankly, the teachers will be pleased to know that somebody is paying attention and wants to help them.
I love it. In this virtual environment we find ourselves in, it's so much easier to reach people where they are. And that goes for the schools as well. So that's definitely something we'll take back and talk with our folks about, but that seems really doable for this fall season or education season. I know you've got a committee hearing coming up in a couple minutes. I want to be respectful of your time, but do you have a thought, a story to share quickly here on an embarrassing moment or an awkward moment that you've encountered or witnessed in this virtual environment we now find ourselves?
I think probably the most awkward moment was very early on, and as we were getting phone calls, as we were dealing with the daily phone call regarding the virus from the governor's office, where we would have the head of the health agency, health authority, as well as other folks telling us what the latest numbers were, whatever. And because people were not used to dealing with this, they did not go on mute. And we had some very active, vocal, intimate examples, intimate things going on while people were officially listening to what was going on officially in the news conference. It was very loud. and it was unmistakable in terms of what was going on. And yes, that was like the second or third meeting that we had, and folks now are they had not developed a situation that they were using a different application, and they hadn't been able to mute everybody, and so it was a little bit of a surprise, but that's probably the most embarrassing thing that we've seen.
Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, and we'll definitely follow up with folks afterwards. If there's any unanswered questions, we'll make sure to take care of that. Senator, good luck in your committee session coming up. Thank you to PSU for your support, and thank you all for joining us this morning.
Take care.
Thanks.